He's the head coach at Butler right now. He calls me and says, Drew, you can't come in for fall camp. I'm like, why not? What? I've done everything right. I've done everything you guys asked me to. And he's like, it's just you're missing a core class on your transcript. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm missing a core class on my transcript? I'm calling my college coordinator, my advisors, all of them. I'm trying to make something work, and we're like, okay, how do I do this? How do I make this happen? What happened for me for this to slip through? Turns out just the way my schedule had worked out the last semester of high school, I missed a core class or something that couldn't allow me to go in or gives me the NCAA requirement to go in. I'm like, okay. So then they get me in a class and knock out a class real quick, boom, done, next. And then I got to send in an appeal for me to go in. And I can say that was one of the most stressful weeks of my life, that appeal week. I'm sitting back there waiting like, okay, what's going to happen? What should I do? What's going to happen if I don't get accepted? Who is Drew Evans? I'm a simple guy. Well, not a simple guy. I really wear my emotions on my sleeve. You're gonna know exactly who I am, just off of a conversation with me. You're gonna know everything about me. Very emotional, very high. I feel very happy and confident in myself and expressing in who I am. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. 46231. I grew up with my parents, two-parent household with my two brothers. Grew up strong. I came into this world playing sports. When I was born, my brothers were coming from a football game. They were playing on the Bears. I think they won the Super Bowl that year in the Little League. But yeah, for sure. They just shook hands in the back. I can't show that, but they just shook hands after I said that. So just off of that, I just came into this world playing sports and playing football. My brothers in the NFL right now. My brother played sports all the way up until middle school, and they loved it. They rubbed off on me so much. We played video games all the time. We played sports video games all the time. NBA Live, 2K, all that stuff like that. So from a young age, sports has been installed into my system. That's kind of like been my whole life. Really jumping around, getting to high school and stuff like that. I really had to start figuring out who I was beyond a football player. Again, jumping around, I injured myself my junior year, really taking me out for a lot of the season. So that was really hard on me, having to figure out who I am and who I could be without having the outlet of football to express myself. Saying that, I'm into digital marketing and sports media now, but that time, that really made me figure out who I was and help me become who I had to be. I couldn't just say I was just a football player anymore. I had to be more than that. My instructor, Mr. Goins, I love that man. I love that man to death. He made me realize that there's more to life than just football. I'm a young man. I'm a young black man. I'm more than just a number. I'm more than the number 12. So stuff like that. He really made me hammer home becoming a MMJ. And MMJ means multimedia journalist. So that means just going out and capturing, writing, lighting, and editing, doing all that for a story. And he made me really hammer that home. And I'm forever appreciative for the skills he taught me. So really, I do appreciate him for that. What shaped my mindset was something that helped shape my mindset was my brothers, for sure. I owe a lot of my success to my brothers because they always pushed me to go farther and better than who I am right now. My brothers were two shining examples of what I should want to be from a young age. My brother's playing football at a high level, and my brother was always working. My whole life, my brother's been working. No matter what, he's worked. And he's been a hardworking man his whole life, consistent. He's the most consistent person I know. My brother Derek, the most consistent man I know, and just that's something I'll never ever forget about him. It's his consistency and how he laid that baseline for me and who I really am today. So forever and always, I'll always appreciate my brothers and the example they set for me. In high school, towards the end of my junior year, I sort of had an epiphany, sort of within myself, saying man, what am I gonna do? I didn't think I was that good at football that year before. Again, I was basing my whole self-value off of what kind of football player I was. I was the player who I was as a person was who I was on 12 Friday nights out of the year. That's who I was. And I know a lot of people, I know probably a lot of young men are going about their lives like that. You guys cannot do that. You know, take it from me. It was my whole life, and then it got taken away from me for a little bit. Can you imagine the kind of effect that had on me? So, yeah, and having to live up to the expectations of what my brother had put in place for me, thinking I had to live up to the expectations of what my brother put in place for me. It was never that. He told me to blaze my own path and don't try to be like him, be better than him. And that's what I tell everybody who says they want to be like me. Not that being like, not like trying to be like me is bad, but go be yourself. Go be better than me. Instead of being like me, go be better than me. That's what I tell them. You know. So yeah, you know. So something I hold more about my story, building on something I hold very dearly in my heart, was the end of my junior year, going into my senior year. I had a call with one of my good friends' dads, Coach Nick Brown. He's a dietitian. He's a dietitian. He does meal preps and all that. He's a teacher at Ben Davis High School. And out of the most of those things, he's a great father and a great man. I call him and I tell him, like, I'm not feeling really confident in my abilities to play football. I feel like I suck. My elbow, tore up my elbow. I dislocated my elbow, partial tear in a little bit, so I couldn't play. So I called him, like, I'm not really confident in myself anymore. You know, I don't think I have what it takes to play at a high level anymore. I don't think I have anything of what it takes to do that anymore. And he gives me the most important talk of my life, truly. I think that without that talk, I wouldn't be in the position I am at Ball State. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I wouldn't be in the position I am with Ball State to do the things that I do in the position my body's in right now without that talk he gave me. So then at the end, he gave me the motivation that, yeah, I can still do this. He told me it was just a minor setback, for a major comeback. Really just the gist of what he was saying. And it just really, Coach Nick, you were right. Wow. That really made me excited to be like, yeah, you know what? I am more than this. I'm very excited to go, you know, play at a high level. We had scheduled IMG for the next year, so that's a really big deal. That's a major deal, you know. So we go into the summer and we're having our first few practice, and I'm realizing that I'm doing very well. Really, I'm standing out. I'm leading. This is something I didn't expect of myself. Really, you know. Always, I'd always thought that I'd always I'd always thought like I was good during the summer. I'd always thought I was good, but I never thought I was doing enough. And that's something that really motivated me because I never felt like I was doing enough. Working hard and busting my ass, just doing all that, and it still never feeling like enough. That just pushed me to do more. And of course, on the back end, my body paid for it, but of course, it's gonna push you if you feel like you're not doing enough, no matter what. I'd make a lot of plays, and then I'd go back and watch the film and be like, I'm not doing enough. That's what really pushed me to be like, okay, I need to go knock this out. I need to be better than what I was. And then as we're going through the summer, we're doing scrimmages and stuff, and we're dominating these scrimmages. Like, it is like night and day what we're doing to these teams. It should be considered murder what we were doing to these teams. And it was not fair at all. Really, I'd say none of them were really close. We scrimmaged a team from East St. Louis, and it was really good. Like, that was the most competition all year, and they're a nationally ranked team. And we're just a whole bunch of local kids from the west side of Indianapolis, and just going out and battling out there, which is crazy, and they're out there recruiting and stuff, So that's, to me, that's something I found really crazy. I'm like, wow, are we gonna be good? So we go through that, we finish up the summer, then we get to week one against Cincinnati Moeller, and they're like a top 30 team in the nation. And we're like, bro, they had this guy, Jordan Marshall, running back. He's at Michigan right now. And he had all the hype in the world before the game. And, he had all the hype in the world, like, crazy. Like, and he was really good. Like, I admit, like, he was really good. We were game planning for him. I'm like, man, this cat is good. I would never say that out loud because my coaches, like Coach Sumner and Russ Mann, would tear me apart, and Coach Zach. Man, those guys will tear me apart if they heard it. They're gonna hear this, but they're gonna tear me apart when they hear it. I thought that guy was really good, and I'm like, okay, so man, yeah, just let's go hope for the best and play our best game. We go out there and we dominate 48-28. Game wasn't close, and we do that for the next two games. We turn up and dominate for the next two games. Then we get to IMG. Probably the most populated game I've ever played in. Um, it had gotten announced in February of 2023, and we're playing it in September. So you can imagine the kind of hype that got built around that as the first team from Indiana playing against IMG. You know, so that was pretty big. That was a big game. We lost ultimately, but I mean, I feel like we put up a good fight for sure. But putting up a good fight really doesn't matter. We still have a loss on our record. You go in the hallway of the high school of the Ben Davis High School, and you're gonna see that 13 and 12 and 1 because we lost one game. So really, it doesn't matter. We still lost, but that's always a blemish on that resume right there. So we go on, we win the rest of our games. We get to the playoffs. We play Brownsburg first game, and that game, wow, that game was crazy. We came back from a big deficit to win that game. Really important, big game. I hugged my good friend Nylan after the game. Very emotional win. We both started crying. Both started crying, and then after that game, then after the game, we went to go play Pike. We've always been Pike. We're both from the West Side, but we know what the better part of the West Side is. Then after that, we went to go play Cathedral. That was a really close game. The thing I remember from the game, it being really cold and us wearing all white. It was a really close game. There was a guy on the other team, Danny O'Neill. He was a guy. He could play well, but just skipping those games and just getting to state, we played Center Grove, beat Center Grove. First time I've ever beaten Center Grove. I actually got to pick that game and ran it down a sideline, just like how my brother did in 2014, 2013. It was like the same exact play, or like not the same exact play, just the same exact path up the sideline. He's a bit faster than me, so he scored. I didn't score. You know, so that's the difference in those two plays. But I mean, I feel like just that happening in that manner, very poetic. Really made me just sit after the game, and I watched that play on my phone for like an hour. Like I'm literally just going back through it and seeing everything what happened, and just attention to detail and seeing how it just broke down, like how my brother's play broke down. Besides that, we go to state, dominate that game. And then after that had happened, it just became like, wow, we just won state. We won state. We dominated the state game against Crown Point, 38-10. I had a pretty good game. And then after that had happened, again, just going back to the search and journey of who I am beyond a football player, I had to sit down and really think about who I was. Because I didn't have to go after school and lift weights. I didn't have to go do any of that. I'm just on my own for the very first time with no responsibility, just going to school and just figuring out what I want to do. At that point, I'm being so serious. I didn't know what I was going to major in college. I didn't even know what school I was going to. I'm sitting, after that, I had leaned really far into our principal at the time, Miss Sandra Squire. I love that woman. I love that woman to death. She's done so much for me. And this is one of the times she helped me. Like, I was very lost, I would say. Not a lot of direction. I had no motivation to go to school. And I'm just, wow, like, what do I do? Football's over, no motivation. And she was just there to help me pick up the pieces and get back into it. That end of the semester was really tough for me. And she really helped me with that. You know, I know she was an English teacher, so she helped me with a few of my English papers. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, but she really helped me, and I'm forever in her debt. Really, she saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, and that was determination. And I was like, wow, she believed in me. She really believed in me before I believed in myself. And before I even had like a serious conversation with her, she reached out to me and just offered her office out just to go sit in her office and just chill out and relax. And I could say my mental health wasn't the best back then or at that time. I was really struggling and looking for someone to latch onto, and Miss Squire was that. So really, I appreciate her for that, and she really looked out for me. And her daughter, Georgia, that's my guy. I really look out for her. She's like my little sister for sure. Always give her a tough time because I expect a lot out of her, and I see a lot of her. I see a lot of myself in her, and that's so great. And I love giving her a tough time because she can be so great. She has so much potential, and she plays soccer right now. She's a goalie. She's really good at goalie, but I would never say that to her face. Never, never, ever, ever. But yeah, it's just yeah. So then just building on that and going through 2024. 2024 is one of the most pivotal years of my life because it just took a lot of self search, a lot of self reflection on who I was as a man or a young man who I was becoming because I was lost. Really, I was confused on what to do with these kind of things. I was getting hit in with where should I go to school? What should I do here, there, anywhere? Then I'm like, then it's winter break, and I'm just enjoying my winter break, but not understanding that this is the most pivotal year of my life. Like, I'm going to be in school in 5 months. I'm going to be in school in 6 months. I'm going to be going to play football somewhere, or if I'm even going to go play football somewhere. That's what that was, you know. So that was really wow. Like, I have to figure it out as soon as possible, you know. And that's what I went into the next semester with. At this time, I had started taking a girl seriously, and then that had really consumed a lot of my time and took a lot of my focus away from important things. I would say, you know, no disrespect to that woman, but I just feel like I put her before myself a lot, and I paid greatly for that. I mean, you can ask any of my family, my two brothers, and Brittany included, like my sister, that she really not a lot good came out of that. You know, it was a bad connection, and I say that really played an effect on my life and how things happen. I lost a lot of friendships because of that, and I really do greatly regret that. I'd say that's something that really painted a played a really big role in how my life developed in 2024. You know, um, so just saying that, I just felt like I couldn't enjoy things to the fullest. Things weren't really going, things weren't really going like my way. Really not my way. And like, yeah, I just felt like a lot was falling apart that those early parts of 2024. You know, but then it just started getting warmer outside, and I'm realizing like I'm a senior. This is my last time in high school. This is the last time I'll be like this kind of free for a while, So I just enjoyed it, enjoyed it as much as I can. Then Ball State University, chirp chirp, they came calling me with an opportunity to go play football for them, and the person who set that up was Mr. Justin Ferris. I'm not sure if he coaches anymore, but that's my guy. He works hand in hand with my family. He was an English teacher in the high school. He coached me in football. He didn't directly coach me, but he was on the coaching staff. He looked out really tough. He's my brother's agent. Our family really really likes him. You know, and of course we love him for that. So and just moving on through that, going on through summer. Getting ready to move in for fall camp, and then it gets to the point where like I can't come in. I'm like, why can I? Coach Lynch, Coach John Lynch. He's the head coach at Butler right now. He calls me and says, "Drew, you can't come in for fall camp." I'm like, "Why not? What? I've done everything right. I've done everything you guys asked me to." And he's like, "It's just you're missing a core class on your transcript." I'm like, "What? What do you mean I'm missing a core class on my transcript?" So then hoops, jumping through literal a million hoops to make stuff like this happen, to make it shake. I'm calling my college coordinator, my advisors, all of them. I'm trying to make something work, and we're like, okay, how do I do this? How do I make this happen? What happened for me for this to slip through? You know, turns out just the way my schedule had worked out the last semester of high school, I missed a core class or something that can allow me to go in or gives me the NCAA requirement to go in. I'm like, okay. So then they get me in a class and knock out a class real quick, boom, done, next. And then I got to send in an appeal for me to go in. And I can say that was one of the most stressful weeks of my life, that appeal week. I'm sitting back there waiting, like, okay, what's going to happen? What should I do? What's going to happen if I don't get accepted? I have to go in next fall or, whatever. That's crazy to me. I was so nervous on what was going to happen, X, Y, and Z, and all that, right? Because dude, it was all out of my favor, all out of my hands. I'm like, what happened for this to happen? Is it my fault? Like everybody told me it wasn't my fault, but for some reason I just fell back on personal blame and how I felt like within myself. So of course that was really scary. But then our athletic director called me. I'm not sure if it was Mr. Jeff Mitchell. He had called me and said, "Drew, you're cleared. You're ready. You're good to come in." And I literally cried. I'm an emotional guy. Like I said, I haven't mentioned I've cried a lot through this story, but oh yeah, I'd mentioned how I cried after hugging Nyland after beating Brownsburg. but I cry often, so like, and I cried when they like green lighted me and told me that I was good and like you're ready to go, and I'm like, wow, this all of this has been building up to this. And really I just felt like that was really powerful for me. That was like a really big moment, like wow, like I can really do this. Like I'm not as religious as I should be. Like I really do admit, but I feel like in that instance, God was really working for me. Of course, I put in the hard work and stuff, but like when it went into the appeal process, I'm really thinking like, okay, this isn't just me. This is God. Somebody else has to be pulling for me. Something else in the world is pulling for me. Something else in the universe, and I truly believe that it was God. And so I really am grateful for that experience. So now, just going into that freshman year of college, it was different really for a while. Since my junior year of high school, I'd really lived alone. Something that had happened with my family had caused me to move in with my brother, or move into my brother's house wherever he was living at the time. And I had stayed with him until I had to leave for school, until I had to leave for college. And really that time really taught me a lot of self-sustaining things. Of course, it's not as simple as it seems. You don't have a parent downstairs cooking a meal for you every night. You don't have somebody doing your laundry for you. You don't always have that. So that's where really a lot of maturity I've gained right now. And I admit I am still very immature. We're gonna get to that soon. We're gonna get to that soon. But I just say a lot of the maturity that I've gained in the moment and the person I am right now really got forged that junior year of high school. That May May 12th, 2023. From that time on, really, the person I had became has really been shaped off of that. You know, shaped off the time I spent alone and away from my parents. Of course, my parents talk to me all the time about that, and I really do wonder how differently things would have went if I was just in their house with them. But I wasn't, and I was off alone, living in Plainfield while they're living off of Bridgeport Road. So that's different for sure. Being away from my parents, not seeing them every day, it really did hit different. At the time, my brother was working the twilight shift. So after my brother Derek would be working the twilight shift, so every time I'd get out of school, he would be at work, and I'm just in the crib alone. So essentially, yeah, I'm living alone. So I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. Come home to an empty house, the trash is overflowing. I got to take out the trash. You feel me? Really, my whole life, I'm not expecting to do stuff like this at this point in my life, but I am. I got to take out the trash. I'd never washed dishes until I had moved into that house. Really, I had to wash my own dishes. That was crazy. I know this sounds very bad, but I had never had to do things like that. And then me living alone, I had to, which is crazy to me. So that really taught me a lot of maturity and a lot of the habits that I have built going into college, you know. But every time my brother came back, it's every time my brothers were home, it's the weekend. Chris and Derek are here. It was always a great time because I love seeing my brothers. Probably don't tell them as often as I do, but I probably don't tell them as often as I should. But I love them to death, for sure. A lot of the things I do, and I mount a lot of my success to what they have done for me and the example they have put in front of me. So I'm forever and always grateful for that kind of stuff. You know, I'm I love them to death. And with the opportunity they have unknowingly blessed me with was the blessing to grow up. I had to grow up. I couldn't be the kid that I was getting kicked out of a baseball game my sophomore year because I was doing dumb stuff at the baseball game. I couldn't be that kid anymore. I had to be the kid that had to grow up. Couldn't even be a kid, really. I was living alone. I had to figure out what to eat at nights. That I'd say that was a hard part. That was something different for sure. But besides that, that's a whole different thing. Moving processes and stuff like that. That's a very long story. How it was just being from there, sitting there alone every night, just going to football practice, coming home and still being in the crib alone and having to sit on the phone. I'd say I got really lonely. For sure. Something I really wasn't expecting to experience at such a young age was being lonely. You know, I wouldn't say a young age. I'd say just as a such underdeveloped age. I was very lonely. You know, of course. Like I said, my brother's working the twilight shift, so I get out of school and lift at 4:10. Then I'd run home and I'd be sitting in the crib alone, just not doing anything, you know, just playing a game, walking around, just calling people, it's so different, but at the same time, it's like, wow, like this is the reality of things. I'm alone, like of course I'm never gonna be alone. I have my family, but at this point in time, I was alone in my mind, never knowing when to do things, just having to self-sustain, my own schedule, figure out what to eat on my own time, go grocery shopping on my own. That was crazy to me. But, I persevered, and the systems I've installed when I was 16 years old, I still use now because I lived alone. You know, when to shower, when to eat, how to do this. If you don't have a meal, you can do this, this, and this, and like things like that. Do your laundry like this. I never had to do my laundry until I moved in alone. Like I said that, but there's just so much that had happened in such a pivotal time of my life. And I feel like I would, a million times out of 10, I would do it over again. Really, you know, no matter what, I would take that experience again because the things that I'm learning, the things that I learned right now, people are, the things that I learned back then, people are learning right now. And I'd say I'm ahead of them because of that, you know? So I'm really, I'm pushing forward. I'm a better man because of the things I experienced and the trauma I endured to get me to that point. It was crazy. It's crazy. You know, I won't go into that, but really it changed my perspective on a lot of things and just talking to my people and how things go, and how things went. Man, it's crazy. And I'm glad things happened the way they did because it just gave me a whole new perspective, you know. So yeah, now just now getting back to college and how that's going. It was great. My first semester, it was really tough. Really, it was. I had a roommate, Ty Curran. He's at Holy Cross now, coaching, playing under his dad. He's a great guy, but man, he was a mess, dude. Oh my God, he was a mess. A story. So the way our rooms were set up, there were two beds. His was lowered and mine was lofted. On and under was all my stuff, right? So my fan was placed by his bed, right? Like right by his bed, right? And it's pointing up at me. So my bed's up here, his bed's down here, right? He lays in his bed, right? It is 1:21 in the morning. We have a 6 a.m. lift the next morning, with oh man, the the most intense strength coach ever, right? Oh man, it was brutal, right? The lifts were brutal. So then I'm laying down, right? I'm twisting and turning. It's my first like one of my first few weeks here, right? And then Ty, my fan is right by his ass. He farts into the fan, right? Man, brutal. I'm like, so then of course, I'm not a robot. I am very not happy. I'm not happy at all. So I get up, I throw a pillow at him, like, what are we doing? You know, can't say exactly what I said on here. Of course not. But of course, I was very unhappy with what had happened, and like, yeah, like we just got into it and stuff like that. I love that guy to death. I really do. I really love that guy to death. He taught me a lot. Even though like unknowingly, he taught me a lot about what college was going to be about. And I'm really appreciative for him for that. Um. So yeah, so when I initially moved in, right, I walk in, I'm like, man, this is where I'm gonna live next. This is where I'm gonna live for like the next 8 months. Wow, this is crazy, you know. So we start putting my room together and stuff, and I'm just thinking like, wow, like my mom starts tearing up, my dad's like getting choked up. I'm like, what's wrong? Then I remember, dude, my parents were bawling when they dropped my brother and my parents were bawling when they dropped my two brothers off, and they're by now probably used to it. So I'm thinking, dang, like they've done this, they're used to this, you know. So that's like to me, that's like wow, like this is not their first rodeo. They understand, and this is nothing new to them. So that was really crazy to me. I'm thinking like, oh dang. Not saying I'm not special, but they've done this before. They're used to it. So then, we're going. I was just going along about my day. I get my schedule. I'm going on my schedule. I had to take a speech class. The speech class was crazy. Oh my god. Speech class is crazy. I really liked that. I was in communication, so I had to take a speech class, and a lot of the speech classes I were doing, they were fun speeches. Sometimes I think I have social anxiety, or sometimes I like to think I have social anxiety. Then I look up and then just, yeah, I'm just being, I'm dancing in the middle of the room, So I actually don't think I have social anxiety. I'm just a bit weird, So, so then, yeah, when I get up, I'd be nervous to go speak. I'd be sitting there, I'd be like sweating, like my face would feel all rashy and stuff. Then I'd get up there and then I'd start speaking and it just feels so natural and fluid and just everything just was great, you know. I was doing I was doing really well. I spoke really well, all that stuff, and just speaking came naturally. We did a toast speech, and I did the toast speech to my two brothers, and that was like, and the thing with that, and the thing in speech class was we couldn't have any for the toast speech. We couldn't have any like paper. We couldn't like speak it. Like we couldn't like look down at our paper. No note cards or nothing. We just had to speak it off the top of our head. And I feel like the reason I did so good is because I already, in a toast is like, here's to, what I'm saying? Like, here's to my brother. Here's to my brothers, because, and I feel like I can do that off the top of my head with no script at all and not memorizing anything because I just feel so strongly about them. That's why I felt like that was so easy. After the class, they had asked me, like, how did you do that? Why were you so good at that? Bro, that's just how I feel that strongly about my people. Maybe I had a million stories to tell about my brothers, maybe how maybe how they used to slam me on the carpet to do WWE moves, things like that. You know, um, the Swanton bomb is, I'd love to demonstrate, but I'm in the studio right now. But things like that, they taught me that, and that's where I'd say a love of physical contact came from. So of course, naturally I was really good at that. And then throughout that time I'm going and, in these few classes I started struggling. I'm like, oh man. And I had this one class on Wednesday called CCIM. And I met a lifetime mentor and a great friend of mine. I wouldn't call him a friend, he's still a mentor, but I talk to him regularly, Mr. Treyon, Dr. Treyon McClendon. That man, wow, he's done a lot for me as a man, really. Um, I met two really good friends in there. Um, Stephanie and Ariana. Those two friends with me. I'm still great friends with them to this day. I'm glad. Only I didn't meet them there. I knew them through Ben Davis, but we became really tight and bonded then. And then Mr. Trail McClendon. Wow, what a mentor. Really, he taught me so much about. He taught me more about myself. He taught me. He really made me get better at eye contact. Like initially, this time last year and this time this year, if you were to talk to me and have one conversation with me from each time, the one thing you're going to notice about me is my eye contact has incredibly improved because it is crazy now. I used to look down at the ceiling, put my hands. I used to be on my phone while I'm talking to him, looking up at the ceiling, like looking at my fingernails, and stuff like that. But then he taught me like you're going to get the most out of a conversation looking a man dead in their eyes. I'm like, wow. I don't know. That feels weird, man. I don't know. Right. And then he's like, no, like that's literally what it has to be. If you're gonna get anywhere in this world, you have to be able to shake a man's hand firmly and look them dead in their eyes and have a conversation. I'm like, wow, maybe you're right. You know, he's my academic champion. He expects a lot out of me. And he just kept guiding me throughout this first year of college. I can't lie. At times I was struggling. I was. The grades definitely came together. Oh man, I'm so grateful for him. Because really what he had did for me is what Miss Sandra Squire had did for me. You know, she really looked out for me and gave me like a benchmark, really a baseline to really feel like, okay, like I can do this. Like she really made me feel I'm okay within myself to do things like this. And that's what Trey McClendon did. But Trey McClendon, he had my number, so he could call me like, let me see them grades. I'm like, whatever, right? So then he'd call me to see my grades, and then he'd give me a hard time about it. But it's absolutely because he wanted the best for me. And no matter what, I'm forever appreciative of him for that, So, like, no matter what, like, I owe the world to him because, what, I wouldn't have gotten the grades that I got without him, you know? He's a great guy. He really paved the way for me. And, we still talk regularly, even though he's a student success coordinator in a school in Kansas City now. I tease him all the time about that because I said, "You leaving me to dry? Come on, man." But the thing with him is he's never gonna stop caring. He's never gonna stop being the great man that he is. And really, I'm very, very appreciative, very, very appreciative of him for that. you know. Now to the big thing, not the big thing, but I'd say a really big thing to me is football. Um, During my so I got there and I come in, right, and there's these two older guys, Joey Stemler and Keontae Newsom. Keontae Newsom wore number 9. Joey Stemler wears number 21. And these are two older guys in the room. They've been around. They play a lot. They've played a lot of football up until this point. I'm like, wow, these cats are good. And I'm really looking at them like this is where I need to be on the field, right? I'm thinking it's easier than what it is. They're ballers, but I'm a baller too. You feel me? I just came from Ben Davis High School, Indiana All-Star, all conference, all that. And I'm just looking at them like I can do that. You feel me? Then we get out there for scout team the first time, right? Damon Kaler, number 55, and Taryn Teo. Taryn is at the University of Cincinnati right now. And so I was playing weak side linebacker. They were in a pool. They were in a pin pool to the opposite side. Taryn came and pulled, and he put me on my back. Like, wow. Well, okay. He put me on my ass. Like, it was bad. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, is this what it takes to play at this level? I was taken aback. I was confused. Like, oh my God. Like, I could do whatever I want to the O-lineman in high school, but now he just did this to me, and I went flying back 5 yards, So, of course, that's when it really oh, my God, like, I'm here now. I can't be here just to mess around. I have to be here ready to play, and I have to get stronger no matter what, My body has to develop. I had to eat better. I had to put good stuff in my body. And I'm just thinking like, oh, my God, like, this man just threw me like I'm a doll, and he wasn't even thinking about me. He just did this to me, and I went flying, So that really made me think, wow. So, yeah, I got to get it together, right? So after that, I go in the locker room and I meet Keontae for the first time. Keontae's a really nice guy. He shakes my hand. He's like, what up, dude, man? And I'm like, man, I'm all in my head and stuff 'cause I had a bad practice, I mean, always that's what football is, you get in your head after a bad practice. And I'm thinking like, man, you got it, bro. You're new around here, bro, like for sure. And really, him doing that was really like the first time I felt like, or the first time there, I'm like, yeah, he believes in me. He really does believe in me. I'm like, wow, yeah, like, I can do this. It's just a bad practice. I'm like, listen, really, I just felt really motivated because he believed in me. I feel like, of course, having it as an athlete, you got to believe in yourself. You got to be confident in yourself. But when somebody else believes in you, that just makes you go, or makes me want to go so much harder and believe that much more in myself. You know, wow. You know, so after that, we go on with the season. I'm in the scout team. We're playing, tagging off. I'm having a lot of good scout team performances. Then we get to our scout team practice. And this is all like super cool. My good friend, his name's Drew. Swear, his name's Drew William Elliott. My name's Andrew William Evans. So if you just call me Drew, we're both DWE. Drew William E. So the thing of him is, we're both the young linebackers in the room. We're both, man, like, come on, we gotta make plays. The scout team practice, young guys against young guys, and we're going out there making a lot of plays. We're out there snapping, hyping each other up, and then I feel like after that, everybody came up to us, started like dapping us up and let us know like y'all good, like your stuff. I'm like, right on, for sure. I feel you, right on, stuff, blah blah blah. Then the next day in practice, the next day in the meeting, right? We go sit in the meeting room. I'm no sleep. My roommate came in super late last night. He went to a party or something. Then I look up on the screen, defensive scout team practice MVP, Drew Evans. And I said, what? And I look around like, and people turned around, they started looking at me like, okay, and they started hitting me. I'm like, whatever. And I'm trying to play it cool, like nonchalantly. And inside, I'm like, let's go, man. Let's go. I did that, you feel me? Like, I ain't nothing to play with, you feel me? I'm here, right? But of course, I still had so much farther to go, And after that, I feel like people started believing me, started believing in my ability, and I just felt like better about doing this, Towards the end of the season, we're getting towards the end of the season, our head coach gets fired, Coach Mike New, great man. I love that man to death. And then our interim head coach, Coach Johnson, he steps in. And he's a great coach, great man, great leader of men. And I really did believe him. He told me something that I've never forgotten since he told me or told us. Violence is a controlled frame of mind. I'm not sure if I'm putting that right, but he's just saying, like, playing football, you have to be violent and be controlled. And that's something that's that's made sense to me. But yeah, it's just stuck with me. And every time I play, and every time I'm thinking about it, every time I'm calling the front, I'm thinking about it like that because I can't be soft playing this game, you know. But skipping forward and stuff like that, where when we get to spring ball, I had a really good spring ball. I think I had a really good spring ball. My coaches believe in me. Coach U comes in, believes in me, puts all this stuff in me. We have a great training staff. Coach KB, Coach Collin, and Coach Greenstone. All those guys believe in me, and I really appreciate all of them for that. I love Coach U. Coach U believes in me. When I wasn't doing really well with my mental health in the early stages of the off season, he really came in and called me to his office, talked to me, and really showed that he cares for what I have going on. And that, like, at the college level, I really wasn't expecting that. So really, I really did appreciate what he did for me and all that. Skipping forward to now, skipping forward to nowadays, it's May of 2025, going into my redshirt freshman season. I'm expecting a lot. I got the right people around me. I'm training a lot. I'm training with Eze Obiria, the Obiria method. If you know, you know. Stuff like that. So, yeah, just really, that's all I got. Yeah, that's me. Or all the important stuff. We'll dive deeper into the childhood stuff like that later. But we got to make it to later, right? Now that you know a little more about me, let's get to the podcast. Let's go.